The Consumer Reports survey on vehicle reliability has been all over the news lately. A few people have even emailed it to me about the dependability of electric vehicles compared to traditional ICE cars, or vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles, petrols, diesels. So let's break down the key findings and the broader context. Before I get into it, I'm Ben Alexander and I make EV news videos every day, so please feel free to subscribe if this is your sort of thing. So who pays for Consumer Reports, first of all? Let's just go straight to the meat of it, I reckon. And who are they? So I'll explain who they are and, who gives them their money, basically. So you have to acknowledge that the Consumer Reports, first and foremost, is a kind of business with charitable aims. So they're a business. They also have a public front, as pretty much all businesses do. There's a sort of back end, front end. What you see on the front end is all the stuff they want you to see, and then you've got the back end stuff. So Consumer Reports, predominantly it's funded by members, consumers, people that subscribe to the idea of it, and people that are buying into what they're saying. But we should also note that they will absolutely, categorically do and will take more money from anybody or entity that just wants to make a donation to their mission, which, as you can see, will cause a sort of pressure to not bite the hand that, feeds them. So that's the problem, basically. I could probably end the video there and say thanks for watching. You know the idea. So the fees from magazines and online subscriptions apparently form the backbone of their revenue. That's where they get a lot of their money. Of course, they will get a lot of money for that. It's generally subscriber funded, and this model allows them to maintain independence and objectivity, as they do not accept advertising or free samples from manufacturers. So this structure is fundamental to their mission of providing unbiased and genuinely, unbiased information and advice to consumers. So this is what they say. I have a few things to note, actually, about this. So while Consumer Reports has established a strong reputation for their independence and impartiality, like any organisation, they're not completely immune to potential influences of the more innocent nature. So here are some hypothetical scenarios in which I think they could be influenced, despite their public safeguards. Internal bias. The staff and reviewers of Consumer Reports, like any individuals, may have personal biases or preferences. And, while their testing processes are designed to be objective, human bias is in interpretation or presentation of results is always a possibility. So basically, it could be the score that something gets on a certain angle, certain facet, could just be slightly off and skewed because of the person that's making the decision on that number that they apply to, how practical something is out of 5. Let's give it a 3 instead of a 4. So market pressure as part of a competitive media landscape. Consumer Reports might feel pressure to align with popular trends or opinions in order to maintain relevance and subscriber interest, which could influence their content. If you imagine, if they know, if they've got data, 80% of the people that read their stuff and pay them monthly money love Teslas, they'll not be keen to slate Teslas. And, as you will be aware, people who own Teslas don't like being told that Teslas are not very good. So limitations. The way tests and evaluations are designed can influence outcomes. Again, these are the sort of excuses for, of the more innocent kind. So if the methodology used by Consumer Reports has certain limitations or blind spots, it could inadvertently favour some products or technologies over others, because it's really hard to, certain things can't be reconciled with a simple number, and yet this is an integral part of what they do. They apply a number, maybe 1 to 10 for something for this and 1 to 10 for that, and that's not the reality, for all products. So, for example, if whilst you are making assessment on a car's reliability, you're measuring the amount of communications that customers of Teslas say that they're having with a vehicle manufacturer, then you could say that having access to Tesla quite easily on like your phone app, for example, or email is going to alter the figures because you could be, you could be striking up a support ticket about weird noises and finicky little details, because communication with Tesla could be a little bit easier than it would be in a more conventional setting. So if communication was like it is with more conventional car sales, such as Ford, imagine you just bought a Ford Focus and you went to a dealer, you bought it. Ordinarily, you're not going to call them up or send them an email or try to find an app. You can contact Ford and say, I've got a weird noise from my mirror. You're less likely to drive to them and, not so likely to call them either. So it's easy to see how you can't really trust their assessments, even if you're being, nice to them and you think, well, these are the more innocent things that they could be just getting a bit off, But not when they're saying EVs are 79% less reliable, because that is laughable at best. So let's dig in. They also commonly receive influence through expertise and partnerships. So engaging with experts and industry professionals for insights is very common with Consumer Reports, as they will be happy to tell you. But over-reliance on certain external experts could introduce bias, because these people aren't publicly avowing to be fair and unbiased. So especially if these experts have industry affiliations, for example. So you can see how they are quite a flawed organisation already with that. I don't need to say much else. Another thing to note is that most charities, but not all, are often businesses with charitable aims. That doesn't necessarily make them bad, because you would much rather there be a charity there in the first place. Now, we can all agree that, for example, cancer research in the UK, that was on the media a lot in the last few years, is a great thing. They genuinely do awesome work, and a lot of people, including me, I've given them money, and you'll often see people at tills in the UK and shop exits and stuff with their things. Don't think twice. I think it is still fine to just give them some money. They're a brilliant organisation. But my point here is they definitely don't need to actually say publicly on their website that they are kind of a business, aren't they? They give their CEO £250,000, which is 10 a year, 10 times the salary of a teacher, and they try to justify that. I just don't think so. If this person's working for a charity, I mean, typically in charities, aren't you supposed to be getting paid less than what maybe you're worth, simply because you're buying into the mission? So that suggests to me, if the CEO is prepared to take £250,000 to work for cancer research, they've not perhaps fully bought into the idea of working for a charity for a good cause. Maybe. So it's clearly a business with charitable aims, and there are actually loads of big companies that you might not have known about, such as Cancer Research, and they have CEOs with million pound houses. So I know of a charity actually here in Brisbane where the guy that started the charity was a poor homeless chap, lived in a car for a while, now drives around in a couple of Teslas, brand new Teslas, $100,000 Teslas. I'm not saying that they should be paid peanuts for running a charity. That's definitely not what I'm saying. Like, they should definitely, benefit somewhat. But I'm just backing up my claim here with some evidence that the Consumer Reports are in fact a business with the aim of appearing very trustworthy and having a lot of integrity. So this, I think, is their game. They once listed Land Rover as being one of the most reliable brands for vehicles, for example. If you know anything about cars, Land Rover, you'll know that this is just like saying the colour black is the same as white. It's just not the truth. Why would you say that? That is just weird. So the average Consumer Reports executive salary is $208,000, and the big bosses, the big bosses, are paid $800,000 a year. So you can feel free to mention in the comments if you think that these people are definitely not being swayed by shafty payments. You can pause the video, just put them there now. So now that's out of the way, you can also see how it's easy to see how EVs could be less reliable these days. 2023, 2024 almost. It's really easy because we are now living in a time where EVs are a part of the very modern world that we're living in. You know, they scan things and radars and have, you know, really big computers in them. Even the Tesla one uses the air conditioning, the glycol, to actually cool down the screen inside in the computer. So back in the olden days, EVs, I think, could have been a bit more simple. Maybe the lead acid batteries would have broken a bit, you know, quite a bit more. But generally, probably quite simple things. I think back in the day, nice and primitive. But these days, you know, we cram cameras in them and sensors and you know, complex computers, and we have to cool these things down to, and you know, in all honesty, it's easy to see how there might be some teething problems. You know, most of which are actually fixed by over-the-air updates, by the way, and often just glitchy software issues as opposed to hardware issues. If you remember the Tesla Model S from the early years of Tesla, they had heaps of problems, loads of them. Door handles failing all the time, the fuse on the battery would stop working, the motor bearings would go prematurely, the charge door would just not always open. But Tesla basically have fixed all of these things in the last, like, 3 years. Really, we've had a good run now where Teslas are just not doing bad. And now, definitely, I would say they're fairly reliable. But people still have occasional issues, but that's, you know, more of an anomaly, I think, at this point. So definitely you can say things have changed there. So they've only been, you know, electric cars, they've been commonplace now, 5 or 10 years around the world. And internal combustion engine cars, they've had decades, the manufacturers have had decades, tens of years to finesse these problems. I don't think it's a big concern if even EVs were less reliable than you know, internal combustion engine cars, but I just don't think it will ever be the case that they're less reliable. So I think we can all agree that perhaps the Consumer Reports are being bought out, as so many entities are around the world, and I'm really interested to know what you think about this. And I am not fooled for 1 minute. If you agree or disagree, you'll be saying something in the comments, because every time I say something people don't like, they put it in the comments. So fair enough. But please let me know, and everyone else actually will read the comments. There are loads of people reading the comments. It's not just me, by the way. Loads of people have already commented on things before I've had the chance to read them. So it's definitely not just me. Thank you very much for watching, and please consider subscribing if you haven't already.